M3 driver takes adjustability to a whole new level, as well as the twist face here that straightens off center hits and this massive hammerhead slot for distance. With just a simple adjustment wrench like this, you can raise or lower the loft. You can give this driver a draw or a fade bias, and you can change things like the trajectory and the amount of spin the driver puts on the golf ball. So what we're going to do today is break it all down very simply and show you how to set up your M3 driver to best suit your game. First of all, let's do the simple things, a bit of housekeeping. Let's look at the opening and locking mechanisms of the screws. Now, to open any of the 3 screws in your driver, place the wrench in the top of the screw and you turn anti-clockwise to open. Now, to tighten a screw, you do the opposite, you turn it clockwise. Now, these screws that secure the shaft and these weights in place, when fully tightened, they make an audible click sound. Don't be worried if you hear the click. It's basically to let you know that the sleeve is safely locked in place, and it helps you prevent over tightening. So you'll hear a sound like that. Now let's look at each screw individually. So let's go ahead and open the shaft screw here first of all. I'm going to hold it with my thumb and forefinger here so that it doesn't fly off. It takes a good few twists to remove it, and when you do, you'll notice lots of numbers and settings on the tip of the shaft. These indicate some of the different loft, lie and face angle options you can choose. Now, TaylorMade use what's classed as a 4-degree tip adapter on their drivers, and at the time of manufacture and assembly, you'll notice that it's set to standard or STD loft, and what you will see is that STD loft and this little arrow here are lined up together. So when the loft is lined up like that, you know that the driver is at 9 degrees. The lie angle is a perfectly standard 56 degrees, and the face angle is square or neutral. Now, there are actually 12 different notches or movements on this sleeve here, and each one increases or decreases the loft by a half or 3/4 of a degree. So what would happen if we reduce the loft? Well, if we rotate the shaft screw from the standard setting all the way around to the lower position and put the driver head back on, ensuring the lines are lined up in the lower position, what you do is effectively reduce the loft of the driver by 2 degrees. So then this effectively sets up like a 7-degree driver. Now, at this setting, the face is going to be 4 degrees more open than normal, and the lie angle a little bit more upright at 58 degrees. So it's really going to put a fade bias or left to right trajectory on your shots. Now, at this setting, it'll also reduce the amount of spin the driver puts on the ball by about 400 RPM. Conversely, if we took off the head and rotated from the standard position all the way to this higher position here and reattach the shaft in the higher position, what we're going to do is effectively increase the loft of this 9-degree driver to 11 degrees. And what happens then is you shut the face 4 degrees more closed than normal. Again, the lie angle is a little bit more upright at 58 degrees, and you add about 400 RPM of spin to your shot. So this will really put a draw bias or right to left bias on your driver. Now, you don't have to adjust all the way to the higher or lower settings. You have little increments here, so you can just incrementally to make these changes more gradually. Now, if you spin the tip from this standard position through 180 degrees, you'll come to this position that says UPRT lie. You can go ahead and reattach the shaft in that position, and at that position the loft is back at 9 degrees standard again, but now the club sits 4 degrees more upright, and the lie angle has changed from its standard 56 degrees to a maximum 60 degrees. So you'll find this sets the club up for a draw, but it's a lot more subtle than in that higher position that we talked about. Again, from that upright lie position, you can make the loft higher or lower incrementally or gradually to feel those changes more subtly. Now, as well as the loft sleeve adjustment options, you also have two 11-gram weights here in sliding rails in the head. Now if you compare this M3 head to the M1 head that came before it, you'll see that the weight track has changed from a T shape in the M1 to now this Y shape in the M3. So really now you have much more weight front to back in the M3. You actually have 3 times more central gravity movement in this M3 than in the M1. Now the standard or default position for these weights is when the weights are split evenly along this long rail here perpendicular to the face. So let's call this the neutral position. And these weights are loosened and tightened with the same tool as before. And again, there's an audible click when you tighten them fully. I'm going to just loosen them here so that we can move them around a little bit. Okay. So if we push both weights as far forward in the face as we can, this is going to move the central gravity forward as much as possible. This is going to kill spin. It's going to create a lower trajectory, and it's really going to suit the better players who tend to center strike the ball more often than not, or very consistently. It gives them a few extra yards. So you'll see a lot of the professionals playing the M3 with the weights forward. If you want the most forgiving setting in the M3, what you would do is split the weights. They're quite finicky, these weights actually. You'd split them so that one is either side of the T track on the back, like so. As well as making the driver super stable and easy to hit, this will promote a very high trajectory on shots. So if you want to create a fade bias with the M3, you'll notice you've got a huge amount of room here. As the fade track, it's quite a bit longer than the draw track, and it's a lot more accommodating. So if you slide both weights to the end of the Y track, you can experience the fade setting and the fade bias at its most extreme. But you'll probably find that a setting where one of the weights is to the end of the fade track and the other one is here in the neutral position, that will suit most people and really set up for a fade. And remember, you can make the changes more gradually or more incrementally anywhere along that track to find the setting that suits you best. Now, if you want to create a draw bias with the driver, you can slide the weights into this track marked draw. Now, you notice straight away this track is much shorter and it really accommodates only one of the weights fully. So if you want to appreciate the draw setting at its maximum, what you do is slide the weights into this position here, where one of the weights is fully into the draw position and the other weight is at the end of the straight track. So just one of its corners is touching it like this. That is the maximum draw setting. Again, you can adjust the weights along the track to make the changes more gradually and more subtly. So that is how you adjust your M3 driver. There is a huge amount of adjustability there, and it's worth your while having a play with the different settings to really appreciate the differences and the results you can get. This could solve your hook problem, it could correct a slice, it could get you that extra precious yards off the tee just by finding the setting that suits you best, or having a lesson or a TrackMan session with your PGA Pro, then adjusting to get the most out of your driver. And again, it's very important to remember that you can adjust your M3 driver on the range or at any time before or after a round, just not during a competitive round. For me, for now, it's Donald out.